Colombia, the elections to choose the next successor to the Casa de Nariño began. Russian President Vladimir Putin reiterated to the leaders of France and Germany his willingness to resume the dialogue with Ukraine. The government of Iran declared a day of national mourning on Sunday to honor the victims of a building collapse in the southwestern province of Khuzestan. Hi, this is From the South. I am your news anchor, Diego Martin, from the TeleSUR studios in Havana. We begin with the news. In Colombia, the elections to choose the next successor to the Casa de Nariño began. The election day began with the tour of President Duque from the presidential house to the voting station number 1 in Plaza Bolívar, Bogotá, accompanied by the First Lady Maria Ruiz and some members of his cabinet, where he exercised his right to vote. Local media report that around the polling centers, Colombian citizens can be observed lining up to exercise their right to vote. It should be noted that around 39 million people are eligible to vote and elect the new president and vice president of the country. We now show the statements of the General Director of the Colombian National Police, General Jorge Luis Vargas Valencia, regarding this first institutional balance on Election Day.
As the Minister mentioned, the report is of complete tranquility in the electoral event in terms of citizen security, coexistence, public order. As you indicated in the panorama and in the national program, we heard it with no special news. Since 3 o'clock in the morning, a device of more than 25,000 policemen moved with officials of the registry office, of the different institutions, all the material at the country level, so that it would be on time at the voting sites. All the caravans, since the delivery of the material, arrived guarded by our national army and the national police to their places of destination.
The presidential candidate for the historical pact for the presidency of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, exercised his right to vote in the presidential elections at a polling station in Bogotá. The left-wing leader went to the polls accompanied by his wife Verónica Alcocer and his family, according to the Colombian press. Petro published a message on social networks before voting in which he defended his dream of a peaceful, beautiful, fair Colombia, full of work and knowledge. In these presidential elections, the main favorites are the candidate of the left-wing coalition and the conservative team for Colombia, led by Federico Gutiérrez. If neither candidate achieves half the votes, the two with the most votes will compete for the presidency in a second round scheduled for June 19th. Gustavo Petro's campaign chief Armando Benedetti accused Colombia's registry office of violating democracy for not hiring an international audit in Sunday's presidential elections.
We have no confidence in the registry office. They are violating democracy. They just knocked down 8,000 witnesses that were working and operating last March 13. There was no way they could hire an international audit. And the most serious thing, the software that makes Thomas Gregg's pre-count has not been verified by any campaign, and if they did, there is no way of knowing because they have everything locked up.
In the middle of protests, mobilizations, and an intense agenda agreed upon weeks ago at an assembly, the parents of the 43 Ayotzinapa normalistas await the third result of the report of the interdisciplinary group of independent experts. The scene of the last mobilization was in Mexico City, where they reconvened while awaiting a meeting with the subsecretary of the government, Alejandro Encinas. This was explained by Vidulfo Rosales, lawyer and spokesman for the parents of the 43 missing students. For his part, Melitón Ortega, a spokesman for the parents, has stated that there is some confusion because almost 7 months have passed since the meeting with the president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, and the agreement established at least one meeting a month. For this reason, they will continue with the action plan to pressure the executive and all federal authorities. The heavy rains that have affected Guatemala since the beginning of May already caused 9 deaths and left over 600,000 people affected by floods and landslides. According to the balance delivered by Civil Protection, 3 sisters in the indigenous community of Huehuetenango and a family composed of a mother and her 5 children in Tucuru are the fatalities left by the torrential rainfall, especially in the northern departments of Petén and Alta Verapaz. In the latest report from the Disaster Reduction Coordinator, more than 562 houses are already affected, 3 schools and 33 roads, some of which are practically destroyed. Authorities renewed the alert calls due to the amount of water that has fallen in several areas of the Central American nation in the last hours. We're going to take a short break now. Please join us again after this. And welcome back to From the South. Russian President Vladimir Putin reiterated to the leaders of France and Germany his willingness to resume the dialogue with Ukraine. The Russian head of state held a telephone conversation with his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, in which they exchanged views focused on efforts to resolve the situation in Ukraine. During the telephone contact, Macron and Scholz urged the Russian president to have direct and serious negotiations with Ukraine and to seek a diplomatic solution to the conflict. Putin recalled that negotiations are frozen on Kiev's side. Meanwhile, he reiterated Moscow's willingness to continue negotiations while warning about the dangers of providing Ukraine with Western weapons. Russian ambassador to the United States, Anatoly Antonov, urged U.S. President Joe Biden to dismiss the idea of delivering long-range ballistic missiles to the Ukrainian government. The statements made by Moscow's diplomatic representative in the U.S. Capitol came in response to information published in the media claiming the White House had decided to supply Kyiv with multiple rocket launchers. The Russian official emphasized that this information needs to be carefully verified. However, he recalled that Moscow has repeatedly warned Washington that actions like that significantly increase the risks of an escalation of the conflict and hinder the prospects for peace between Russia and Ukraine. In this regard, he called on the United States government to put an end to shipping weapons to that country. In the Donbass, the port of Mariupol is preparing to receive the first ships after the intense battles in that city on the Sea of Azov. More details in this report by Alejandro Kirk.
The port of Mariupol has been completely demined, and also marine mines have been removed. As you see, we're doing a tour along the Bay of Mariupol, where ships are expected to start bringing construction materials for the reconstruction of the area, but also to bring products from this zone to other ports of Russia and the Black Sea. A marine officer explained to us with further details how the demining process was conducted at this port located south of the People's Republic of Donetsk. Our Special Forces unit have completed an event to clear the Mariupol port waters together with a group of combat divers. All tasks were fulfilled in full in the waterways in the coordinates of about 10 minutes. Measures are in place now too to rule out the possibility of any sabotage groups in the area. The weather is constantly changing. The sea is stormy, so you just have to work in general terms right away. The water is murky. The eyes can't see, but you have to work with your hands. In short, all tasks by touch. The sailors show the remains of a crane ship sunk by the Ukrainians to prevent access to the port. It turned out to be blocking the entrance to the harbor, and the harbor was blocked off by 2 screens. Access was blocked, impossible to enter the port. Anti-tank and anti-personnel mines were everywhere. We have a standard sign, that is, when the demining team works, when ammunition is detected, the calculation number to find ammunition sets a flag, thereby indicating that it is explosive objects. Then the commander of the demining group approaches, decides to blow up the ammunition depending on the charge, or evacuate it if it's subject to it. If not, it is destroyed on the spot.
Alejandro Kirk, TeleSUR, Mariupol, República Popular de Donetsk.
Russian Agriculture Minister Dmitry Patrushev announced on Friday that they will export around 50 million tons of grain for the 2022-2023 agricultural season. According to his statements, they expect this year's crop to exceed last year's. They also expect, based on their projections, that grain exports for the 2021-2022 agricultural season will exceed 37 million tons, thus reaching record levels. Last year, the country achieved a production of more than 120 million tons of grain, including nearly 76 million tons of wheat. At least 35 people have been reported dead in the last 24 hours due to heavy rains affecting the city of Recife, East Brazil. According to the Civil Defense of Pernambuco, most of the victims so far are from the community of Jardim Monteverde in the south zone of the Recife. The entity in charge of attending to disasters confirmed that Saturday alone there are already 25 deaths linked to the rains in Greater Recife. It also forecasts that the number of deaths could increase. In addition, the National Institute of Meteorology issued a danger alert for heavy rains in Pernambuco, which today may have winds exceeding 100 kilometers per hour. Iran's vice president held talks on climate change and drought in Iraq on Sunday alongside the Iraqi foreign minister. Ali Salayege, vice president of Iran and chairman of the Iranian Environmental Protection Organization, met with Fuad Hussein in Baghdad. As well as discussing climate change and drought, the talks focused on attempts to combat sandstorms which have hit both countries in the past week. Hussein said the discussion was about how to cope with this climate phenomenon on national, bilateral, and regional levels. Salayege added that the countries would use all international means to be able to start the executive phase of controlling the origin of dust storms. The Iranian delegation is expected to meet the Iraqi Prime Minister in Baghdad later on Sunday.
We are confident that through dialogue, we can solve many of the problems without interference by foreign countries, and we can create, God willing, a regional convergence regarding the issue of dust storm control.
We have more news coming up after a final short break. Please stay with us. Hi and welcome back. The government of Iran declared a day of national mourning on Sunday to honor the victims of a building collapse in the southwestern province of Khuzestan. Tehran's authorities detailed that the death toll from the incident that occurred in the past days in the city of Abadan increased to 29. They also reported 38 people missing, although the exact number of citizens trapped under the rubble is still unknown. The President Ebrahim Raisi stated that he issued strict instructions to all officials to take all necessary measures in the investigation of the catastrophe. On the other hand, the leader of the Islamic Revolution, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, offered his condolences to the families of the victims and urged the authorities to prosecute those responsible and apply exemplary punishment. Nigeria's former vice president and stalwart of the opposition People's Democratic Party pledged to restore unity after winning primary elections and being named the party's candidate for the 2023 election. Nigeria's main opposition party on Saturday named former Vice President Atiku Abubakar as its candidate for the 2023 election to replace President Muhammadu Buhari. The 75-year-old former vice president and northern Muslim has made numerous bids to attain the presidency of Africa's most populous country. Abubakar won most ballots from the People's Democratic Party delegates who voted in a primary election in Abuja on Saturday, beating a challenge from Rivers State Governor Ezenwo Nyesom Wike. And tensions rose early Sunday morning on the esplanade of the mosques in East Jerusalem when groups of Israeli settlers desecrated the Palestinian holy site as they prepared for the March of the Flags. The occupying forces violently attacked the Palestinian youths who were confronting the Israeli extremists and settlers, while several Tel Aviv aircraft violated the Lebanese airspace by flying over the border of occupied Palestine. The Palestinian youths confronted the Israeli forces, who even attacked the Red Crescent volunteers. In view of the severity of the situation, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas warned that Israel is playing with a fire in a reckless and irresponsible manner by allowing settlers to desecrate holy sites. More than 30 people were killed and others resulted injured when a stampede broke out at a church event in the southeastern Nigerian city of Port Harcourt on Saturday, according to police and security officials. According to a regional spokesman for Nigeria's Civil Defense Corps, the incident took place at the Port Harcourt Polo Club, the venue of the annual Shop for Free charity program organized by the King's Assembly Pentecostal Church. The drive had not yet begun when the stampede took place. The crowd forced their way into the venue, despite the fact that the gate was closed, resulting in the deadly charge. A police spokesperson said an investigation has been launched and a report would be released in due course. Now, the food crisis has begun to reach its most pressing peak. World wheat stocks will be exhausted in 10 weeks, according to a United Nations report. Sarah Menker, director for the analytics firm Grow Intelligence, presented a report to the UN Security Council warning about the complex situation of the food crisis. The causes, she said, are not just the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, but also the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, the disruption of the supply chain, and extreme natural events. David Beasley, executive director of the United Nations World Food Program, echoed the alarms raised by Menker, adding that the crisis is already leading to serious protests and unrest in countries such as Sri Lanka, Indonesia, Pakistan, and Peru. With that, we've come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at TeleSUR English. You can also join us on social media for all the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I am Dio Martin. Thank you for watching.
In a world